Open the door!
We're from the National Crime Agency. Okay? I'm here this morning to arrest you, alright, for the offence of conspiring to facilitate illegal entry into the UK, contrary to Section 25 of the Immigration Act 1971.
Okay.
For that, before we say anything else, I must caution you, which means you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which will later alarm in court, and anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
He came to Britain from Lithuania, looking like just another bloke chasing a better life. But what came next was a criminal career that stunned the authorities and put him right at the heart of two of the UK's most serious organised crime investigations. This is Arturas Jusas, though at times he went by Arturas. To the people who worked under him, he was the boss, quiet, deceiving, and ruthless. By the time police finished piecing his story together, they realised he wasn't just another hustler. He was a man who built an empire out of people smuggling, then carried on running a massive drug operation from inside a prison cell. Arturas Jusas was born in Lithuania, part of the former Soviet bloc where poverty and unemployment pushed thousands to look for work abroad. He moved to the United Kingdom in his early 30s and settled in Lambeth, South London. To neighbours, he seemed like a foreign lad trying to make ends meet, keeping to himself. But in reality, he was forming links with criminals from Eastern Europe and South America. Those contacts from Eastern Europe became the foundation for a human smuggling network that stretched from Belgium to Britain's east coast. By late 2020, Jusas had already been on the radar of the National Crime Agency. Investigators had picked up chatter about small boats bringing groups of Albanians across the channel, but one job in particular caught their attention. It was November 2020 when a battered fishing vessel left the Belgian port of Ostend, heading for Great Yarmouth. On board were 69 Albanian migrants packed into a space barely fit for half that number. The plan was simple: land quietly, somewhere along the Norfolk coast under cover of darkness, unload the passengers, and send them off to waiting cars. The vessel never made it that far. British border officers intercepted it just off the Norfolk coast. When police boarded, they found terrified migrants, freezing and hungry, sitting among leaking fuel cans and broken nets. The two Ukrainian crew members, Igor Koshi, aged 57, and Volodymyr Mikhailov, aged 49, were arrested on the spot along with Aleksandrs Gulpe, a 44-year-old from Latvia. The migrants were taken into custody for immigration checks. Back in London, the NCA followed the digital trail. A seized laptop led them straight to a Latvian national named Sergejs Kulis, who'd been supplying the group with encrypted communication software. It didn't take long before the investigation reached higher. Phone data linked both Arturas Jusas, living in Lambeth, and Kafir Ivgi, an Israeli man based in Finchley, to the same network. They weren't the ones steering the boats, but they were the ones giving the orders. The scale of their plan shocked detectives. They weren't just moving one boatload. They had drawn up plans to move 50 people every week, a full-time production line of illegal crossings. For them, it wasn't about rescuing anyone or helping families reunite. It was business, pure profit. Each migrant was charged thousands of pounds for a dangerous ride on vessels that were barely seaworthy. By June 2021, arrests were made across the country. Jusas and Ivgi were taken in without much fuss. When officers searched their devices, they found messages about payment splits, routes, and links to other traffickers in mainland Europe. The evidence was overwhelming. In August 2021, at Chelmsford Crown Court, Jusas admitted his role in the conspiracy. He didn't bother with a defense. The others, Ivgi, Kulis, Gulpe, and Koshi, fought their charges but were all found guilty that November. Mikhailov was the only one cleared. When sentencing came, the picture was clear enough. Jusas was described as one of the central organisers. He was 35 years old and already controlling an international network that cared more about money than lives. The court handed him 9 years and 9 months in prison. Ivgi got 10. Kulis received 9 and Koshi 7. It should have been the end of the story. Another trafficking gang dismantled and the ringleaders locked away. But for Arturas Jusas, prison was just a new base of operations. He was sent to HMP Highpoint, a Category C jail in Suffolk. Like many others, he kept his head down at first. But inside, Jusas began building a new kind of network. Using smuggled mobile phones and encrypted apps, he found a way to make money without ever leaving his cell. This time the trade wasn't people, it was drugs. By early 2023, messages from one of his phones started surfacing in other police investigations. Officers tracing the supply of cocaine and ketamine in southern England noticed several numbers linked to a man serving time in Highpoint. They matched to Jusas. He wasn't talking openly in the chats, but his presence was clear. Others in the group referred to him simply as the boss. The operation he ran was organized like a business. He offered transport services to other criminal groups across Britain, gangs in Yorkshire, London and Sussex, promising to bring in bulk loads of cocaine and ketamine from mainland Europe. For a fee, he'd handle the logistics, drivers, vans, routes and cover loads to make the shipments look legitimate. Everything was run remotely through WhatsApp groups with names like Unload One and Loading. On 26 July 2023, the plan for one of their biggest runs was in motion. A lorry driver named Pavel Budsko, aged 50, had picked up a shipment in France, 30 cardboard boxes filled with cocaine and ketamine, and ferried them into the UK through Newhaven port. Waiting nearby were two smaller vans ready to collect the cargo and move it north. The Ford Transit Connect was driven by Charlotte Moore, aged 32, with Stephen Norris, aged 36, as passenger. The Vauxhall Combo was driven by Abdul Surabi, aged 53, from Sheffield. They met at a quiet location near the port, loaded the boxes, and set off up the A26 at Maresfield. What they didn't know was that police were watching. Acting on intelligence shared between Sussex Police, Yorkshire and Humber Rockview, and the National Crime Agency, officers stopped both vans. Inside, they found around 70 kilos of cocaine and 632 kilos of ketamine, a combined street value of roughly £24.5 million. All three drivers were arrested immediately. Budsko slipped away but was caught 2 months later when he tried re-entering the UK on the 28th of September 2023. While officers processed the arrests, analysts went through the phones seized from Moore and Norris. That's when the Unload One WhatsApp group came to light. The chat logs showed detailed instructions about where to meet, how to load, and what times to move. Among the contacts, investigators found the familiar Lithuanian number of Arturas Jusas. Further digging revealed this wasn't a one-off. Moore and Norris had already made another run in May 2023, transporting 107 kilos of cocaine using the same method. The lorry driver that time was Kirill Laptso, aged 42, whose DNA was later found on the packaging. The evidence left no room for argument. This was a full-scale smuggling network, moving Class A and B drugs in bulk across borders under the command of a man sitting in a prison cell. By mid-2024, the arrests began to pile up. On the 2nd of July 2024, Andrew Guds, aged 39 from London, and Ihor Korobets were taken in after being identified from the group chats. Guds had already been stopped months earlier by Essex police while carrying nearly £20,000 in cash for Russell King, another key figure. That bag of money tied him to the wider operation and the phones used in the Unload One messages. The pattern was obvious. King, Guds and Korobets were the ground team. Jusas was the organizer behind the scenes. King's part in the story was particularly bold. While Jusas stayed behind bars, King travelled across Europe, handling the physical side of the deals. He met with Budsko in France on the 25th of July 2023, helping load the 30 boxes onto the lorry that would head for Newhaven the next day. When King returned to Britain later that summer, he didn't come empty-handed. Border officers caught him in August 2024, driving a motorhome filled with 100 kilos of ketamine. His phone, seized during the arrest, contained messages straight from Jusas, detailed chats about routes, schedules, and packaging methods to dodge border checks. Those chats also exposed how big the operation had become. Threads called Load, Load Tonight, and Loading pointed to multiple previous shipments that had slipped through undetected. Every job followed the same formula. Drugs sourced in Europe, moved through France, ferried to Newhaven, split between smaller vehicles, and driven north under cover loads. The scale was massive, nearly a ton of drugs moved or attempted in less than a year. The trials came thick and fast. The first wave, Moore, Norris, Budsko, Laptsu and Surabi, faced Lewis Crown Court in June 2024. Moore got 13 years, Norris 10, Budsko 9, and Laptsu 9. Surabi was acquitted. A month later, in July 2024, the second wave, Goods, Korobets, and King, were sentenced together after a jury found them guilty. Goods received 18 years for conspiracy to import both cocaine and ketamine. King and Korobets each received long terms of imprisonment. All the while, Jusas stayed where he'd been since his first conviction, behind bars, but now facing a mountain of fresh evidence proving he had directed one of Britain's largest recent drug importation schemes from within prison walls. The combined seizures from his network, almost a ton of narcotics, represented the biggest ever drug bust in Sussex at the time. To understand how he managed it, you have to look at how prison technology has changed. Smuggled phones and encrypted apps gave inmates like Jusas the ability to manage entire networks on the outside. Messages were sent through private chats that vanished after viewing. Contacts used coded language and shared photos of loads disguised as legitimate freight. Each shipment was planned like a business deal: weight, delivery point, and cut of profit. Jusas acted as the broker, earning commissions without ever touching the product. He was effectively running a multinational logistics company, except the cargo was cocaine and ketamine, and the profits were laundered through cash drops and shell companies. The investigation showed payments for vehicles, designer clothes, and even luxury fragrances, all funded through the proceeds. It wasn't about survival or hardship anymore. Jusas had gone from being a migrant trying to make a living to a man flooding Britain with drugs while already serving time for another serious crime. By late 2024, with most of his crew locked up, the network collapsed. Financial traces linked to the operation were frozen, vehicles seized, and properties searched across London and the Midlands. The damage had been done though. Between 2021 and 2024, Jusas' schemes had smuggled humans, then narcotics, into Britain's communities, both leaving behind fear, addiction, and exploitation. The timeline of his criminal path paints a grim picture. November 2020, fishing vessel intercepted near Great Yarmouth carrying 69 migrants. August 2021, Arturas Jusas pleads guilty to human trafficking charges. December 2021, sentenced to 9 years and 9 months. July 2023, police seized 70 kilos of cocaine and over 600 kilos of ketamine on the A26. September 2023, main lorry driver arrested returning to the UK. June 2024, first wave of convictions in the drug case. July 2024, second wave of convictions including Goods, King and Korobets. Across those few years, one Lithuanian immigrant moved from smuggling people into the country to smuggling the substances that would ruin many more, and he did it all while supposedly locked away. Today, Arturas Jusas remains in custody. His earlier 9-year sentence for trafficking runs alongside the heavier terms connected to the drug importation case. He's likely to spend well over a decade in the prison system. For law enforcement, his story became a textbook example of how modern organized crime crosses borders, adapts to crackdowns, and thrives on technology even inside secure facilities. From the outside, he never looked like a big player, a quiet man in his mid-30s from Eastern Europe who kept to himself in South London. But beneath that calm surface was a mind built for crime, always calculating, always finding a way. He started by exploiting desperate people who paid him to risk their lives on the channel. Then he turned to flooding the same country with drugs worth millions. It's a story of greed that spiraled out of control. One immigrant who saw Britain not as a new home, but as a marketplace. And though he's behind bars, the systems he built show how organized crime can run on from anywhere if the will and connections are strong enough. Arturas Jusas didn't just move drugs or people. He moved the boundaries of how far criminals could go. He proved that prison walls mean little to those who know how to reach beyond them, and that greed can turn opportunity into destruction faster than any addiction it fuels. And that's how a Lithuanian immigrant ended up flooding the UK with drugs, running one of Britain's largest smuggling operations from a prison cell, turning his sentence into just another business address.